Good afternoon and welcome to Seahawson Hour. Thank you for joining us today. It's a beautiful Wednesday, October 26th day. It's nice and cool. We're coming to you live from St. Michael's. That's where I'm at. And the weather's been great. Today we have Breanna Lameman with us from Shiprock, Arizona, and in recognition of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and as we're kind of coming to the end of the month, we wanted to welcome a guest who's going to tell us about her journey in overcoming and defeating breast cancer. Now, as we think about breast cancer and the many types of cancers that impact our people, breast cancer is the most common cancer found in women. Breast cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death for Native American women. Approximately 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer in her life. Native American women have a 7% higher cancer rate compared to non-Hispanic white women. And also Native American women have a 10% higher death rate compared to non-Hispanic white women. And these are just some facts that we wanted to put out there, and they come from the American Indian Cancer Foundation. But the severity in which cancers impact our people are troublesome, and the way that a lot of our relatives that we know have been impacted by cancer, have been diagnosed with cancer, and what they've gone through, the trials and tribulations to try and come back from it, to treat it, are things that I'm sure that a lot of us are aware of. And for some of our Native American relatives to beat it, to be in remission, and to actually have beaten cancer is something that is so uplifting to hear about. Just really quickly, I did have an aunt who had cancer recently, and it wasn't breast cancer, but it was cancer. And when she had found out about it, it was in a further along stage, like stage 4, and she wasn't able to treat it, and she wasn't able to beat it. So there is, as we look and think about our relatives, there's a sometimes short periods of time when we learn about it, and then when we have to, while they address it, we're a part of the process in supporting them. So that's just a little story about one of my aunts that unfortunately did succumb to cancer. And I feel every day I miss her, and every day I wonder, why did what were the causes of that cancer. But anyways, to be more specific and to get back on track with what we're talking about today, I'm going to go ahead and let Breanna introduce herself. And Breanna, maybe just tell us about where you're from, and maybe what you're doing these days, and then we'll jump into the topic. So Breanna, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Tachini Nishlan, Nadat Dene Bashishi, Batani Dashe, Auto Totini Dashnale, Breanna Lameman. Hi, I'm Breanna. I usually go by Bree, and you're more than welcome to call me Bree. I am currently from Shiprock, New Mexico, residing there. What I do there is I go to school. So I'm a graduate student at the University of Arizona, and majoring in public health and health promotion, health behaviors. And so what I do is just really kind of ties into what I'm very passionate about, which is food sovereignty, farming, gardening. Kind of grew up with those values and practices all my lives, thanks to my mom and my grandma. And so Shiprock is a farming community. It's very lively with, just being in touch with the land, the water, and the animals, and just understanding how valuable food is. Mm-hmm. And with that, I also work at the U of A as an Indigenous researcher. I used to work with the Navajo Healthy Stomach, which is kind of tying into stomach cancer, but also how how it relates to H. pylori, which is a bacteria that is found in the stomach. And it can also be found in your food and water and other aspects. But other than that, I also developed a program called Nurturing Plants, which is utilizing a hydroponic system and teaching individuals about hydroponics, how you can use it to grow food, and realizing how where we live is how our environment is changing due to climate change and how we must adapt and to our environment, but also being aware that our climate is changing and what do we do as Native people to, kind of combat that, but also how do we continue growing our own traditional foods in a more sustainable way, but also eco-friendly way. And so that's just kind of some of the things that I do. And yeah, that's pretty much about me. And thanks.
Awesome, awesome. Did you and just on that note, did you have a farm this year? Did you plant and work a farm this summer?
Yeah, so yeah, my family has two farms in Shiprock. One of them's kind of an alfalfa farm where we grow hay, alfalfa. And then the other farm is where we grow our produce, our melon, squash. However, this summer, this farm season, we didn't really grow any foods just because we did a soil test and we really wanted to improve our soil. So we grew cover crops to increase our nutrients in our soil.
Wow.
And to also suppress some weeds that we have been dealing with the past months or past years. So those are some of the things that we did this summer. But also my mom and we had our own garden. We built our own garden beds, our raised beds in our backyard, and I got more into hydroponics, and so that's kind of how we were able to still grow food, but just in smaller.
Awesome, awesome. We might have to bring you back sometime to talk about that because those are really ways that a lot of people are starting to garden and to grow food, in their own backyards, outside of farming, big plots. But even with us, with the Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund, we have the Tsebin's Sky Community Center in Monument Valley, and they constructed a greenhouse, and so they're doing some greenhouse planting there. But yes, thanks for joining us today. It's nice to hear from you. My father was from Shiprock, New Mexico. I keep transposing Arizona. I'm like an Arizona guy, but
We can just say the Navajo Nation.
yeah, just the Navajo Nation, exactly. So it's nice to have a fellow Shiprock chieftain or Shiprock resident on our show today. But let's go ahead and maybe talk about the topic today. We wanted to talk about breast cancer and breast cancer awareness. And as I understand in our talks, as we've kind of been briefed and talked briefly about the topic, you have a journey in which you were diagnosed with breast cancer, and in the end you beat breast cancer. So can you maybe just lead us through some of that discussion in terms of how it came about that you became aware of it? I know that we talked about, maybe like, was there a history of breast cancer in your family, or was there not? And was it shocking to find out, and then kind of moving through, what you had to go through? So I'm going to kind of turn the mic over to you, so to speak, and let you tell us a bit about your journey.
Yeah, so in last year in July 2021 was when I found a lump in my breasts, and I can't remember what I was doing, but I found it myself, and I wasn't examining myself. I just somehow managed to find it, and immediately I told my mom, and the first thing that popped in my mind was cancer. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I did have to schedule a appointment, at the Indian Health Center. And at the time when I got diagnosed, it was October 3rd, and I
Mhm.
was 26 by then. And so when you turn 26, you pretty much get kicked off your parents' insurance. And so I was on my mother's insurance, got
Mhm.
kicked off when I got turned 26. So that kind of left me um, seeking assistance with the Indian Health Services.
Okay.
And that wasn't my first choice to go to. I
Mhm.
do have differences with seeking services at the Indian Health Services.
Mhm.
And I ended up going there, and only because I didn't have any insurance. And that was
Mm.
my only way to seek assistance and find more help with what I was experiencing with. And
Mhm.
so I went, to Shiprock IHS and went through, I told them I found a lump, and the first thing that they wanted to do was do at least 5 tests. And so the tests were an MRI, a biopsy, and an ultrasound, a genetic test, and I'm trying to remember the other tests. But those were some of the tests that I had to do. And so since the Indian Health Services, IHS doesn't have certain services, such as an MRI, I had to go seek service out in Farmington and at a different facility. And so with that, there's challenges when you have to seek services out of IHS, because you do have to get a referral. And once you get that referral, you go to, the hospital, however you need. So it's very complicated when you get a referral, because
Oh
your
man.
referral can be approved or denied. So
Okay.
with mines, I kind of was given like the option of, we will approve it if you apply to Medicaid or Medicare. So I was like, okay, I'll
Mm.
apply. And it was just kind of like, well, you have to apply and then I'll approve it. But then I was
Mm.
just like, well, I need to go get my MRI. It's very important. This is kind of crucial.
Mhm.
So I ended up applying to Medicaid and got approved, thankfully, but that did take a while. But still, I was able to get my MRI. I got all these tests done, and I was just waiting on a biopsy as well. So there were so many tests I was waiting on.
Mm.
And sure, when I did do the biopsy and the genetic test, that it came out as breast cancer
Oh
from
wow.
the biopsy. And later on, I was waiting for the genetic testing to
Mhm.
determine what type of breast cancer. And by then, when I got the genetic testing, I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, meaning I
Mm.
don't have, I don't test positive for estrogen or progesterone, or, the hormones, or any HER2 breast cancer. And so with triple negative, I didn't test any positive for any of those, and or even the genetics. It didn't come from family history or anything like that.
Oh
And
wow.
so, I was really curious to find out, okay, what does triple negative mean? Like, how do you get triple negative?
Mhm.
And so I was through my research, I found that it could be from the environment, what I drink, what I eat, what I breathe in. And it could also be, throughout time, or it could be kind of in the area or environment I live in. And so it just kind of really made me think, like, all right, well, I live a healthy life. I have a
Mhm.
mother who's a dietitian. She knows the value of food, the importance of food, and really encompassing nutrition into my kind of daily food ways, and just
Mhm.
making sure that, not only I, but our whole family eats very well. And, encompassing exercising, that we exercise just to, live and obtain a healthy lifestyle.
Mhm.
So I was like, I was just thinking, man, I don't understand why I got breast cancer. I did everything I could to prevent this.
Mhm.
I don't drink, I don't smoke,
Wow.
and it's really trying to think, what is it? So
Mhm.
just kind of with my background, I was thinking, well, I do live near my uranium mining tailing, less than a mile
Mhm.
away. There are 2 power plants in the area. and just kind of doing my research that, these power plants, they produce a lot of methane in the air. I was reading some articles that the Four Corners is a methane plume, which is, can be very toxic. So it's just, realizing that our environment is what's causing these issues of cancers, just not only in breast cancer, but in multiple cancers in the Navajo Nation. There's a bunch of abandoned uranium mines in the area, and just realizing that a lot of extraction happen. A lot of our area is very rich in resources, which, individuals love to come into the Navajo Nation and extract resources and leave it without cleaning up. And so with that, some of our relatives, they play in the area and they develop over time cancer or certain health issues. And so it kind of came to the realization that, this is kind of caused by the environmental injustices that we face in the Navajo Nation. And just for energy, to power people's homes for the cost of, someone's health, and just realizing, indigenous peoples and minority people populations, they face more environmental justices just because of where they live and what they do. And so that's kind of how.
Let me jump in right there really quickly, because I think that those are that's an important point and an important topic. One of the things that I kind of wanted to maybe refer back, or to jump back to in a little bit, would be that initial process. You said you have some issues with IHS, and it sounds like IHS gave you the runaround, and so that I wondered about. Did that take a long time to kind of get you through your referral to all of the screenings?
Yeah, so it took a while. It took at least 5 months for me to receive treatment. So when I got diagnosed, I was at stage 2 of
Okay.
breast cancer. So by the time I got to be referred out to see an oncologist in Farmington, I was diagnosed with stage 3. And
Wow.
at that time, and just because in triple negative therapy, it's more aggressive, so it can grow faster and spread faster. So by the time I was able to go to the oncologist, he immediately drafted up a plan. I did get a second opinion, so both the doctors were able to agree on the plan. And it kind of, by that time, the cancer grew, it metastasized to my lymph nodes, and yeah, and that's how I was diagnosed with stage 3 by that time. And so with that in mind, I was just kind of shocked. I was scared, and kind of cancer and death kind of go hand in hand, especially when you're diagnosed in that kind of late stage. And just reading on research and literature that natives, indigenous people are diagnosed at a very late stage, and by that time it's kind of too late. And so with that thought in mind, I was like, it was very shocking, it was scary, but I was also very upset. Why did this take so long? It shouldn't take this long. But then realizing that I'm not the only one who's being diagnosed with cancer during this time, there's other individuals who are seeking the same services, the same tests. And so it takes a long time. It took a couple of weeks to get my tests, to do my tests, to receive my tests. And so it's just, man, it was just like it was very, yeah, it was frustrating. And, not only I was frustrated, but my mom was frustrated. And it's, having to tell these doctors, like, you need to do your job, you need to put me you need to send out my referral ASAP, just kind of with me having to, and my mom having to keep pushing the doctors, the healthcare workers, and just like, we need to get on this. This is serious. This is my life.
Sure.
And,
Well,
people don't like being pushed, but you kind of have to push people to get things moving.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it sounds, the things that I'm hearing that you're saying too is that it metastasized at a kind of an aggressive rate. And from the time that you kind of maybe first were diagnosed until, a little bit further within that 5-month period, it had already gone from one level to the next.
Mhm.
In those ways, um, I'm sure that it really kind of impacted how you were feeling about maybe your own life, just in terms of like looking at mortality and just thinking like, oh my gosh, how can I get some treatment for this? How am I going to move forward? And like, I don't want this to be something that is fatal, even though cancer is fatal. But like, maybe talk a little bit about after that part of the process, um what it is that you were thinking. One thing that I wanted to also just kind of bring up is that you said that you had a pretty healthy diet. Your mom was a nutritionist, dietitian. You were exercising, so you weren't leading a life that was maybe conducive, shall we say, to getting cancer. You weren't smoking or drinking, or trying to eat good foods as well too. So for this to happen to you, um was very, I'm sure, shocking. So maybe just kind of talk about those things just a little bit.
Yeah, so, during the time of, feeling frustrated, having these feelings of, cancer, mortality, how do you deal with it? And I kind of just sat with those feelings and allowed myself to feel it and to, live in that experience and to not just brush it away, because it just kind of encompassed my whole life during that time. But during that time, I went, I moved to Tucson. So I was in Tucson when I found out about my cancer diagnosis. I was living there, going to school.
Mhm,
And so I I have plans of, going to school, having a career, getting educated, and just kind of gaining a lot of knowledge,
mhm,
but also just realizing, I can't give up what I came out here to do. And I had a goal in mind, and that was to, get educated and just kind of in the Western way, but also to step back and realize, who I am as a Dene woman, and just really encompassing, embracing my culture, my knowledge, and
mhm,
in the Dene, in the Dene, in the Dene ways. And so with that, I couldn't do it alone when I dealt with this. So, I stuck with my traditional practices. I did
mhm,
ceremony, I did prayers, and I feel like that's what really got me through the whole during the time of experiencing, cancer and
mhm,
stages, and just realizing, I'm going to get through this, and
mhm,
having faith and knowing that I'm going to be all right.
mhm,
And realizing that, I can't stop school. If I stop school just because of cancer, then
mhm,
it's and not do anything during that time, it will, I was thinking it's going to drive me crazy. So
mhm,
I stuck with it during school. I still had a full-time load of classes. I was
mhm.
also a graduate assistant,
Oh wow.
helping teaching courses and grading papers, and doing working on my own projects. So those are some of
Mm,
the things that I was working on. So during this diagnosis was kind of the time of where I was developing my public health career,
mhm,
and I didn't want to give that up because of cancer, and just I didn't want to step back. So
mhm,
instead of just realizing what I had to step forward and really push through with what I wanted to do in life. And that was to, keep going to school, keep doing the projects that I'm doing, keep growing food, keep living, just keep enjoying my life, and realizing that, cancer isn't gonna take me. It's not
mhm,
over, it's not gonna, you know, encompass me and who I am. But
mhm,
I mean, over time it did, but I
mhm.
wanted to be able to be in control and do the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that sounds inspiring, just in terms of being able to look at the situation that you were in and saying, I can't give up. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to kind of keep going head first into my education, my career, and just to kind of keep that positive mindset. Also to have been able to utilize traditional medicine as a way of treating the ailment, or the cancer in your body, I think is important too. A lot of our a lot of our relatives on the Navajo Nation are traditional practitioners in terms of the how they go about treating their bodies and their health and the spirituality. It's all kind of it's not something that's separate. It's kind of a life way, and
Mhm.
that's how I believe, if you have positivity and you believe that in the medicine that you're taking, that it really has a greater impact on your body. um and that's how we all should live as Native Americans. We should be incorporating our traditional medicines and spirituality into our daily lives. For some people, because they've been a little bit further removed from culture, they're not they don't have those opportunities. But I think if we look for them, they're there, within our families. A couple of weeks ago, we did welcome Rebecca Sosi to our Sihasin Hour, and she talked about um, some of the environmental injustices that Native Americans face and how they're going about dealing with those things, through legislations and through protecting their lands. But some of the things that she said are just in sync with some of the things that you talked about, in terms of environmental injustice, in terms of our environment on the Navajo Nation, and how we have a long history, our legacy of resource extraction that has just left our lands scattered with uranium, abandoned uranium mines, the tailings of uranium mining, and the way that our sometimes our tribal governments look at resource extraction as maybe the only way that we might be able to move forward in terms of generating money to fund our governments and to fund our communities, is something that as Native Americans we have to, or as community members, as relatives, as people who live on tribal nations, have to start to work against, to so that we don't pollute our communities any further. And I think that, in terms of how you were talking about, some of the traditional views and life ways, that's exactly how we see our land. We don't see that that we are not a part of the land, that we are not a part of this world, that we're all interconnected in terms of life. So if we're extracting these resources that we're not supposed to from the ground, and there's the repercussions from that, and some of those things, are not it's not it's scientific. When you look at how those uranium mining has impacted our aquifers, or our water sources within the area of Cove, and the more recent spills that we've had that have the Gold King mine spill that impacted the San Juan River and the river that runs through Shiprock. I mean, that's not the only time that that river has been polluted. um and in terms of the uranium mining as well too, my dad is from Shiprock, and he talks about how when he was a young man, that he worked in I guess a uranium processing kind of a facility, and he would touch it with his bare hands, and
Mhm.
people would do that. Some people, the people he was working with, and there was no like regulations in there. My dad didn't, fortunately didn't get cancer, but just these aspects of life that our people were exposed to and dealt with as kind of like regular life, have impacted us to this day. And I think you also brought up a good point about that area, the Shiprock area, and the power plants that are there. Sometimes, as you kind of descend off of Narbona Pass and you look towards Shiprock, you can just kind of see the haze that sits over Shiprock and kind of extending even into Farmington, and that has to impact our people. You know, that the pollution that comes from those smokestacks that sits over our communities. You know, I'm sure that it impacts a lot of people's respiratory conditions. So, mainly kind of saying we have a lot of environmental issues that and pollution contamination issues that exist not just in that area, but I think that what you were talking about is that you had kind of been able to see that those were factors in what had happened to you, you know. And I think that we need to all do better in terms of speaking up to those issues to stop those things within our communities.
Yeah, I totally agree as well. Just realizing how are really impacted by, extraction and these pollutants in our environment, and just realizing that we do need to speak up to our tribal governments, our tribal leaders, and really educating the community about, some of these issues that we're dealing with, especially with helium. I think some people really don't know the extraction of helium might cause towards some of our community members, or even the impact of the Gold King mine spill, and just educating and bringing awareness about that.
Mhm. Well, I think that where we were at when we were talking before that little diatribe was just that you had been diagnosed. You were continuing on with your life. You know, you were feeling like, you know, I'm gonna just keep moving forward with my education, with my career. It sounded like it did give you some direction in terms of your path for your career in health. But maybe you could start to talk about moving into kind of the treatment and how, you know, that was impacting you at the time.
Yeah, so when I started treatment, so I was diagnosed October, and then I finally received treatment in December, and or towards, yeah, the beginning of December. And by that time, the oncologist decided that I had to go through chemotherapy, and that I would go through at least 16 rounds of chemotherapy every week. And, when people think of chemotherapy, you just kind of think of these drugs that you're going to take, which, kill the cancer, but they also, kill healthy cells in your body. It can have, like the cells in your mouth, pretty much your whole body, the cells in your hair. And that's kind of the reasons why people develop sores in their mouth, they develop rashes. That's why your hair falls out. And with the treatment that I received, it's really hard to explain some of these drugs, or even how to pronounce it, but it was called carboplatin and Taxol.
Mhm.
And these two drugs kind of go hand in hand together, and I was treated for 12 weeks every week. But
Mhm.
before I received these drugs, you do have to take drugs before this, just so that you can prepare your body
Mhm.
for these harsh drugs that are going to go in your body. So with that, I had to take Benadryl, I had to take steroids, I had to take an immunotherapy, and I had to take another drug. So I was in the cancer treatment in this chair for like 5 to 6 hours, receiving drugs every week. And just so you pretty much go through, just kind of an initial inspection of your body. The nurses inspect you, making sure you're okay, that
Mhm.
ensuring that you don't have a reaction to these drugs. So that's why you prepare um, with, your Benadryl, your steroids, and I can't remember this other drug, but
Mhm.
you're preparing your body for the chemo to come.
Mhm.
And so it just takes a long time to receive these drugs. The nurses go through these protocols. They even wear a gown when you're given the chemo, because they know if this drug touches them, or if anything were to happen, that it would burn them and hurt their skin as well. And so with these drugs, these two drugs, it was given through a port place. So
Mhm,
before I could receive, so these two drugs, I could get it through my vein, or I
mhm,
can get a port, which is you go through surgery, they put a port place in your chest. And so one of the things before I started receiving chemo is that I had to get a port.
mhm.
And I got a port the first time and it was done wrong. So
Oh,
I had to get the port taken out because it was done wrong. It really messed up my whole body, and my head was just kind of leaning forward, and it was just so uncomfortable, and it didn't feel right. It started to get infected. And so I went back in, I told them what was happening. And so I had to get another surgeon to do the job correctly. And so that surgeon was like, yes, it was placed incorrectly. It shouldn't have gone under this bone. And I'm just like, you trust these people to do the right thing, to do the right job. And unfortunately, it wasn't that way with me. And so I had to get another surgeon to do the job again. So I went through surgery, and
man.
I'm a big baby when it comes to needles. I'm not a big fan of needles at all. So
Oh, no.
having it, poked so many times in my hands and my, arms, it was just horrible for me.
Oh, no.
And to go through surgery again, I was just like, man, you know, nobody wants to go through surgery. It's so horrible. But for me, I had to go through it again, get another port to,
Mhm,
receive the drugs again. So I
mhm.
went through 12 rounds of chemo with these two drugs. And then the next round, which was 4 rounds of these drugs, was it's called andromycin and cytotoxin. And with these drugs, the nurses call it the devil's blood because it's red, and it has to
Wow.
be given intravenously, meaning that it has to go through the port. It can't be given through the veins because this drug could burn your veins, it could burn your skin.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and it can only be given once out of the life in your lifetime. After that, you can't be given again, just because of how harsh these drugs are.
Oh my
So when
goodness.
I was given this drug, the had to be given throughout a 10-minute period. So I had the nurse sit there with me, and she would slowly inject the drugs.
Oh man.
And man, it was just insane because afterwards completing those rounds, my urine would be red, my sweat would
Mhm.
be red. And usually when you're done with chemo, you shouldn't be touching people, you shouldn't be using the same cups because you sweat out the drugs. And
Oh,
so you don't
dang.
want the drugs getting on other individuals. So that's one thing that I had no idea about when people get chemo, is that you have to be cautious of
Dang.
the first 3 days, 2 or 3 days, in terms of being in contact with people. Like you can't give people kisses, you can't touch your
Mhm.
dogs. You just have to be really cautious. So with me, I had to have my own set of cups,
Mhm.
my, silverware, had to I had to have my own bathroom. Nobody couldn't use the
Mhm.
same bathroom as me. And my
Wow.
sheets had to be washed immediately right when the 3 weeks were done. Just
Mhm.
really being cautious because I did live with my mom and my brother, and
Mhm.
making sure that they didn't get exposed to the drug just because of how harsh it can be. So
Wow.
those are some of the things that I had to deal with every week: changing my sheets, changing a lot of things, my clothes. I had to have a set of clothes every week that I would wear to chemo. I couldn't wear anything
Dang.
new. uh,
Mhm.
so just some of the things that I dealt with. And
Mhm. It sounds like the drug was super harsh,
Mhm.
almost like toxic, just in terms of how, um, the nurse that was administering it had to kind of have a suit on as well. Is is that how it felt in your body?
So so with these toxic drugs, you have these side effects, feeling nauseous, vomiting.
Mhm.
Um, so I didn't have those side effects. I didn't feel nauseous. I didn't vomit. The
Oh,
only side
wow.
effects that I had was just losing my hair. And that
Oh,
was the most very impactful thing in my life because I had long hair and
mhm.
I loved my hair, and
Sure.
started falling out. That just really like
Mhm.
destroyed me. It really like disrupted my spirit. And it kind of just reminded
Wow.
me like back with our ancestors when the kids had to have their hair cut, just kind of reminded me of those situations. And
Mhm.
so just, realizing like, I can't, like, this is like, it was such a rough time when
Mhm.
my hair is falling out, and I
Mhm.
had to shave it. I had to cut it and shave it just because it kept falling out. And that
Mm.
was just so very impactful.
Mhm.
And but thankfully, once I completed chemo, my hair started growing back.
Mm.
And I was getting really excited. But when it
Mhm.
came to, oh, so I guess before I continue
Mhm.
on. So during chemo, it can disrupt your fertility. It
Mhm.
can stop your fertility. So you can either preserve your eggs if you
Mhm.
are wanting to, have a child in the future. So I didn't get that option. So instead,
Oh.
because I had to receive chemo as soon as possible.
Oh,
And
wow.
so with that, I had the option of receiving a hormone blocker called Luprin, which is a shot every month. And with this shot, it stopped my ovaries, but it pretty much preserves my ovaries, so that in hopes that it preserves, my ovaries when I decide, if I want to have kids in the future.
Mhm.
And so with that, I was given a shot every month, and in hopes, that the chemo, these drugs don't, harm my ovaries.
Mhm.
And I was on that for the remaining of chemo.
Mhm.
And at 26, I was going through menopause. And
Mm.
with
Wow.
menopause, you have, your hormones are insane. I don't know
Mm.
if you hear, your mom is saying like, man, I have hot flashes. I had hot flashes when she was having hot flashes too. So we were both going through it together.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was pretty insane. It was crazy. And I couldn't believe what I was going through, what I was
Mhm.
experiencing. And those were just the side effects that I received during chemo, but also from that drug. But I didn't
Wow.
really experience the severe side effects of chemo, which was,
Mhm.
I was very thankful for. My body was able to withstand those drugs
Mhm.
really well. The only thing was the downfall was, losing the hair and
Mhm.
having to deal with skin rashes. And so,
Mhm.
being young and being able to withstand these drugs, I think that was the upside of it.
Mhm.
But
Well,
after it complete, oh,
go
go
ahead.
for it.
I was just
Oh,
gonna say my question would be, having taken those drugs that were to address or to the hormone blocker, um, does that mean that you could still have children, um, or 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 did the chemo and the treatment and everything impact that in a way that you don't think that you would be able to do that?
so
Post
I would have to get tested, but um,
Mhm.
it's just kind of once I get tested, that's when I'll know if, my ovaries were still preserved and stuff like that. But,
Oh, okay. Okay.
that was something for me. It was just like, wow, like, I'm not planning to have kids right now, but, in the
Mhm.
future, maybe, but,
Yeah.
just kind of like thinking ahead of like, well, you know,
Mhm.
these are some of the things I would like in my future. But for
Mhm.
now, I had to receive the chemo to shrink the tumor. Uh,
Mhm.
and then once I completed chemo, I had to decide whether I wanted a mastectomy or a lumpectomy. But considering that they found cancer in the lymph nodes, that they had to remove all my lymph nodes in
Mhm.
my arm. And that also meant that I had to get one of my nerves cut as well when they did the surgery. So I also had to decide that I decided I wanted to do a lumpectomy, which is just kind of removing the tumor. And whereas a mastectomy is, you're removing the whole breast. And so I decided to
Mhm.
go the lumpectomy route just because I've been researching that a mastectomy and lumpectomy are kind of they kind of deal with the cancer in the same way, but
Mhm.
um, in terms of, I just wanted to keep, that part of me with me. And
Mhm.
I decided to do the lumpectomy and the surgery. It went well. I had my surgery in Farmington with, with a with experienced person who've done lumpectomies almost every week. And I couldn't believe how many times he was doing it out of the week, but
Mhm.
he said, I'm experienced, I know how to do this. And he, really sat with me and told me what was going to happen, and, was there for me. And I felt very that I could trust this person to do what he said
Mhm.
he could do. And, he was telling my success rates and everything. So
Mhm.
I agreed to lumpectomy, and we went through surgery. And so when I came out, I had a lumpectomy. They removed the tumor, they removed all my lymph nodes, but they had to cut 2 nerves in my arm. So I don't have fillings in some part of my arms, which is fine with me, but also just to get to some nerve, or get to some of the lymph nodes, because some of the nerves were wrapped in the lymph nodes. So they had to cut that out. And but the surgery went well, everything went well. The only thing that I experienced was just my arm, the nerve pain. So I had to go through physical therapy for 2 months.
Mhm.
And with that, I healed. I'm strong again. I can lift my arm up. Before I could not lift it up, but now I can lift it, do all the things that I want to do. And so I,
Oh,
recovered really well. And
that's good to
a
hear.
week, yeah, a week after surgery, the doctor said, it was clear of margins. There's no cancer left over. You beat cancer.
Oh,
And yeah, I was really excited. I was happy. And during that time, it was, on my way to Cortez to go get some seeds. And it just
mhm.
somehow worked out really well. And that's when I heard the news. And it was,
Wow.
in a way, I couldn't believe it, but I also was really excited about it. And
Mhm.
but with that, the doctor did say that I had to go through radiation just to ensure
Mhm.
that, cancer doesn't reoccur.
Mhm.
I was like, man, this battle is not over yet. So
Mm.
once I recovered from surgery, I then had to go to radiation, and I had to complete 29 rounds of radiation, which was a lot.
Mhm.
And the radiation center was closed in Farmington, which is like a 45 minute drive away from me. So I was like, man, where am I going to get radiation? So he said, it's closed because you're getting a new system. And I was like, all right. And he said, you're going to have to go to Durango. And I'm like, man, that's kind of a long drive from, Shiprock to Durango. It's a little over an hour and a half. So I went there every day for a month and a half and was in that machine for less than 10 minutes. And then I went back home. So I was only there for 10 minutes in the machine, went back, and that pretty much happened every single day.
Oh, wow. My
Mhm.
gosh.
And
So
so, oh, go for it.
I was just gonna say, just to kind of put a little timeline to some of this, the beating and overcoming the cancer was, um after you had taken that first series of chemotherapy, you said that there was kind of like an end series, where you did maybe a certain amount of kind of a reduced cycle, I guess, in terms of chemo. And then after that, you had the lymphectomy. I'm sorry,
Lumpectomy.
lympectomy. After the lympectomy, then that was when they were able to determine that you were free of cancer at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, then even though they had determined that, you still had to do these rounds or these treatments of radiation then. And that, did you say, was 29 treatments? Or
Yeah, 29 rounds. Yep.
my gosh, 29 rounds. And that caused you, or that you had to drive to Durango every day for that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's really like a huge undertaking on your part to have to, like when we hear about these treatments, it's not just like, oh, here's the treatment, and um
Then you're
everything's
done.
provided for you.
Mhm.
I mean, there's you there on your part, you have to put forth time, transportation, money,
Mhm.
um, beyond the emotional kinds of impacts and spiritual impacts that you undertake to keep yourself positive, to push through this. you still have shall we say, real world impacts of having to, get your transportation, pay for gas, get over there, get back, provide, like you're saying, in the first parts of your treatment, like changes of clothes every time, not being able to touch people, not being able to share cups, I mean, like um there's a whole set of standards that you have to abide by that, you know people don't really know about. And I think that those are the things that would kind of heavily impact you as well too, like just beyond undergoing the medical treatment. All of these other byproducts of the treatment are just, probably draining as well too, on your energy and on your positivity. However, it sounds like in the story that you were talking about, you did the radiation treatments, and so are you kind of are you done, you're done with that, those treatments?
So I have one more treatment, which is immunotherapy. And so I've been through immunotherapy when I was going through chemotherapy. So immunotherapy is just pretty much boosting my immune system to continue to fight, any cancer cells, but it's just, to ensure, cancer doesn't reoccur. So
Mhm.
with that, I'm doing 9 more of those. So I won't complete my treatment until next year. So I'm still going through
Oh,
treatment, and just because triple negative is very aggressive and it can reoccur.
oh,
So, the doctors are ensuring that, the cancer doesn't reoccur. We should, get her on these other treatments just in case.
mhm,
But, also realizing that since I was diagnosed with a triple negative, I also was informed that I do have a weak positive of estrogen. And estrogen, which is a hormone receptor, can, contribute to cancer. So they're kind of treating that. It's just a 1 to 5% possibility of it might contributing, but they're not for sure determined that it is.
mhm,
So with that, I also have to take more hormone blockers for 5, 7 years, just as an in case situation that that the hormone receptor is not contributing to the cancer. So
mhm,
it's a very long process that I have to go through, but, I'm just willing to do what I can, to ensure cancer doesn't reoccur for myself. But,
mhm,
I'm kind of thankful for, what you were mentioning that, I did have to take all this time out of my day, but luckily,
mhm,
I was in a good situation, financially, I live with my mom,
mhm,
had money set aside for myself. I was able to drive to Durango every day, but also the cancer center was able to give cancer patients $50 every week to go to to receive their treatment, but $50 only went for like 2 trips to Durango. So I was forking out a lot of gas money, and gas during that
mhm,
time was very expensive.
mhm.
But
In hindsight, and kind of looking at your journey thus far, where you're at now, um what would be some of the things that you might want to um advise our viewers, or maybe our other young women? What are things that you think that you've learned that you might want to share with the viewers, in terms of things that they might want to look out for and do, early on?
yeah, so just kind of being young and having to deal with cancer at a young age, I did not expect to receive this diagnosis, and that I wasn't really checking myself every month as we should be, considering this isn't going to happen to me. I'm too young. That's not the case. It can happen to anybody. And just realizing that you should be checking yourself, getting your daily checkups. If you feel like something's wrong, go to the doctor and really advocate for yourself. Even if the doctor isn't listening, you just have to tell them, this is what's happening to me. This is what I feel. This isn't right. And, if that doctor isn't listening, then, having to go to another doctor, but that also takes a lot of time too. But just really advocating for yourself, because you're advocating for your health, your overall well-being, and just, pushing yourself to do, to work out, eat healthy, just kind of be aware of your family's history. If, just kind of keep tabs on, your relatives, check in with one another, making sure, that you're taking care of yourself, that you should be really valuing your body, who you are, really connecting with your culture. And I feel like that was one of the ways that I was able to come out of this alive, was just connecting with my culture, who I am, really trusting our ceremonies, our prayers, and our medicines. And I feel like, our traditional medicines and our foods are the way that will really help us heal. And, I'm still going through the healing process, and I'm still, doing what I need to do and continuing on, and that, cancer didn't beat me, and that I was able to beat it, and I was able to continue to do what I need to do, as, for myself, for my people, and just wanting to, come here today and just provide awareness, that cancer is very prevalent in our areas. We do have a lot of risk factors that we face, a lot of, environmental justice that we face, and that we do need to advocate for ourselves, for our land and our people, and that, whatever anyone out there is doing, whether they're advocating, defending the land, the people, maybe you're doing research, maybe you're a college student starting in, cancer biology and public health, or being a scientist, researcher, anything that you're doing is, you're doing it for not only for yourself, your family, but, for our people, that you're bringing in all this knowledge and combining it, with the Western way, but also, our traditional way, and, improving our overall health and well-being, and that, and that's how strong will we become, is just keep continuing on, and with the knowledge that we know, and keep fighting on. So yeah. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, I just wanted to first and foremost thank you for sharing your story with us and with me and with our viewers. It's important. It's something that we should all learn from, in terms of how we need to be aware of our bodies and advocate for our health on our own behalf. You brought up so many important points, in terms of entering into any kinds of treatment and saying, hey, I know this isn't right, and having the doctors live up to their responsibility in terms of providing you treatment. um, One of the things that I more recently in one of our past Sihasin hours that was said was, we use the term resilience a lot, um, in terms of how our people have withstood so much oppression and assimilation to get where we are today. But more often it's endurance, and we've endured as Native people, and that endurance, I believe, is passed along through our bloodlines. You talked about how, in facing that, you lost your hair, and how you related that to the boarding school era of our people, in terms of them having to have their hair cut and look at themselves. You know, those are similarities in terms of these repercussions and byproducts of colonization that impact us to this day. But here we are, and you're a fine example of a person who has kind of taken the horse by the reins and said, you know what, I'm not going to just let this stop me. I'm going to keep pushing through. I have goals. I'm gonna do the treatment. That in itself is taking a brave step forward to say, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I've heard about it. I know how it impacts people, or I'm learning about it, but I'm still gonna go forth and do this for myself, because I want to overcome this, and this isn't going to be something that beats me. So in those ways, congratulations on your I guess, for them to tell you that you beat cancer. I don't know if that's a diagnosis, but congratulations on that. You've done a lot, and your story is super important, and I'm glad that you shared it with me today. As a man and as a male, and entering into these conversations, I feel honored that you were able to share that with me. And we wanted to provide, a safe space and a space that's conducive for you to get your message across. But for all of our viewers out there, men can get breast cancer as well. There's all different types of cancers that across the board affect men and women. So it's important for you as a man as well to get your checkups, to be aware of your body and say, hey, this doesn't seem right. If you have a lump in your breast, in your chest area, in any other of your areas, to start to take it serious and get those things checked out. Because cancer is, unfortunately, like we were saying, it's one of the main causes of death, in our native communities. It's the second leading cause of breast cancer, is the second leading cause of cancer death for Native women. And so there's quite a few cancers that are affecting us out there. So I wanted to thank you. And I like what you had talked about in terms of how you're also undertaking hydroponics and farming. We might have to bring you back to have you talk about that with us sometime.
Yeah,
So
I would love to speak more about hydroponics and how we conducted our first workshop in our area. So yeah, I'd love to spread the word, spread the knowledge out there.
okay. Well, thank you, Breanna. Akehet. And for everybody who's out there, please, if you just caught the tail end of this, go back and rewatch it on our page, and go to our YouTube page, and you can see all of these episodes. Next week, as we start to jump into Native American Heritage Month, we're going to have a number of guests that from our community that are challenging just traditional roles of livelihood in terms of what they're doing. And so we have a roster of actors, kind of athletes who are not undertaking just traditional athletics, but like mountain bike racing and Jeep racing. We also have, like I was saying, next week we'll have Jeremiah Bitsui on, who was he has a role in Better Call Saul. So we want to just talk to people about what they're doing and how they're pushing their careers forward and reclaiming the narratives that we have as Native Americans. So join us next week. Breanna, we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.